OMG. Welcome to another tour. I'm actually here in Battery Park today, guys. We're doing a tour of the southernmost part of Manhattan. It's a really nice park, a lot of history here. We're gonna do a lot of cool stuff. We got some great views. It's gonna be a magical day. Beautiful weather. I got to wear a long sleeve. There was a flash flood yesterday, and that's unfortunate, but you know, it's nice today, and we gotta bounce back and do a little bit of walking. So, oh, before we start, no big deal, but maybe you should check out the Patreon. That's a huge help. That's how I fund all these things. Some extras on there also too. Go ahead and just like the video. Give it a quick click. It takes 2 seconds. A thumbs up, you know? Also too, you can subscribe. If you've seen more than one of these videos, please subscribe. That's a huge help. That's how you get these videos. I'm gonna keep making them regularly till the day I die in 140 years. But aside from that, Lucie, you ready to do this thing? How you doing?
Great.
Got Lucie here today. I'm very happy to have her. How are you?
Very good.
Did I just ask that same question?
Yes.
Okay, I'm already repeating stuff. Well, I guess with that, I guess we are pretty much ready to go. Should we do this?
Yeah, you got some new shoes too.
Oh, these old things? No big deal. All right, thank you for noticing. Well, we ready to do this?
Yes.
All right, let's go. Take her easy.
You guys have a lovely day.
Thank you.
And have so much fun.
Likewise. Talk to you soon. Awesome. Yeah, meeting people, no big deal. That's what you do here. So we're walking through Battery Park. Called Battery Park because this is actually where they had the battery of the city, which is like the cannons and everything protecting the area from the late 1600s actually. Just had tons and tons of cannons and everything protecting the whole colony of New York at that time. Before that it was New Amsterdam. So that's where it got its name, you know. And people used to just stroll around that area with all the cannons and things, and it was a cool thing to do. Come with your people and just walk around with, because of the views. These views are incredible. I got the B-roll coming. You're gonna see plenty of great views. I don't wanna mess up the lighting. A little secret of production. Okay, but then you have here the View. This is called the View, the restaurant. It's kind of a little tourist trap, but it's a little restaurant here. You can hear all the music that we're probably gonna get copyright striked for. Copyright stricken? Anyway, we're walking through. All right, so now we're walking through Battery Park. So, a little bit of history. This is the southernmost point of Manhattan, meaning this is where the colony of New Amsterdam started. So Henry Hudson kind of set up shop here. Well, he didn't set up shop here, sorry. He discovered this area in 1609. Quote, discovered, because there's actually another guy who really discovered it. We're gonna talk about him a little later. But here is where, on the one side, you go up the East River, and on the other side, you go up the Hudson River. Kind of goes around, but this is where the colony of New Amsterdam started. We're gonna talk about that a little later as well. So this is the southernmost point. This is where like the most historic part of the whole colony was. In fact, because it was a Dutch colony, there was actually canals going through here. Broad Street. Oh yeah, look at that. Dr. Playground. That's my nickname. Sorry, I take that back. That's not my nickname. That's a creepy nickname to have, especially as a grown man. All right, let's keep moving. So we're walking here. You see one of the memorials here. Lots of statues and memorials here. So this is the Coast Guard Memorial. The Coast Guard Memorial was set up, well, first of all, this is fairly new, but the Coast Guard itself was actually set up in 1915, by the way. And it was basically like a combination of a ton of different, you know, ministries or departments, you know, things like the Lighthouse Department, the Navigation Department. They just basically consolidated them all into the Coast Guard. And during wartime, actually, the Coast Guard is under the Navy, and during peacetime, it's actually under the Transportation Department. So it's kind of interesting how that happens. Coast Guard, you know, they're the ones who catch people smuggling drugs, and you know, they're the ones who, when people get stranded at sea, all that kind of stuff, that's what they do. And it's actually modeled after an actual rescue on the beachhead at Luçon in Europe. Pretty cool little thing. All right, let's keep moving. Here you have the sea glass carousel. I talked about carousels in my last video, the Bryant Park video. You know what that means, right, Lucie? Nice accent, by the way. Lucie's European. But this is the sea glass carousel. The reason they chose all these little fishies that spin around and stuff is because here at Castle Clinton, this was the first aquarium in the history of the United States. This is an actual aquarium in the late 1890s. It was turned into an aquarium all the way till the 1940s. This is after it was a immigrant processing center, which I'll talk about also in a little bit. So we're walking. How you doing, Lucie?
Great.
You doing okay?
Yes.
You enjoying yourself?
Yes.
You don't just have to say that, you know.
Yes.
Do you speak English?
Yes.
Great. Now you can see the great view of Lower Manhattan here.
No.
Hey. All right, so now we're going to walk into another war memorial. Lots of memorials for war. We're going to walk in here, show you guys this other one called the East Coast Memorial. One interesting thing to keep in mind is that we're walking on landfill. A lot of this is landfill. As the island was expanded, they actually created a landfill to kind of connect us to what is actually the castle that we're going to see here in a second. But this park is actually kind of empty right now. Normally lots of tourists here, break dancers, other kinds of, entertainment and things. But tourism is a little slow. Oh, look at that. You can see behind me, not too much light. Great view of the Statue of Liberty, Lady Liberty. Can you see that, Lucy? A little too far away? All right, we'll get a B-roll. So we're walking. It's a nice little day. So this East Coast Memorial is actually dedicated to the 4,601 servicemen who were missing or disappeared at sea during World War II. In fact, you have here this 19-foot eagle, this massive eagle. Albino Manca was the name of the guy who created it. Pretty cool name. Big old eagle. Pretty intimidating. And you have all these 19-foot slabs of rock showing the names of all the people. Pretty nuts. And we're cutting through. Yeah. Coastal waters, Atlantic Ocean. All right. A nice park. Like I said, tons of tourists here because this is where you also catch the cruise to the Statue of Liberty and to Ellis Island, which is right over here on this side. You can't see, it's going to come back in a little bit. It's not there now. You come here a lot, Lucy?
Ever.
That sounds like a pickup line. I'm trying to pick you up there.
No?
You come here, you come to Battery Park often? Huh? And now we're walking through still. And here in front, you have the good old Castle Clinton. Castle Clinton was actually built as a fort to protect New York City during the War of 1812. Now, the War of 1812, interestingly enough, the United States had learned a lesson from the Revolutionary War, where New York City was taken. And this was actually the headquarters of the British during the American Revolution, because they were able to take it during the Battle of Long Island. In fact, I've talked about that one. I talked about it in the Brooklyn Heights video.
Sick plug.
Yeah. But the Battle of Long Island was the beginning of the end for the Americans here in New York. The British took it over. So to kind of correct that mistake that they made, during the War of 1812, they built 4 forts. All right, so this was one of the 4 castles or forts built to protect the new city of New York from the British for the War of 1812. You had also Castle Williams over on Governor's Island. You have Fort Wood on Liberty Island. That's actually the star-shaped fort that the Statue of Liberty is built on. Unfortunately, we can't walk inside right now because it is closed, but it is pretty cool to look at. Anyways, also too, here's a pretty cool statue. I'll get it in B-roll, don't worry, Lucy, so we don't have to get the sun screwing everything up. But this is called the Immigrants. It's actually supposed to depict a lot of the immigrants who came here to New York City through New York City, because this was the main immigrant processing center of the United States from the years 1855 to 1890. 1890 was actually when the federal government took over immigration, and they started the process of building Ellis Island. Before that, it was run by the state, and this was the most popular one. So that's 1855 to 1890, right? Before that, in 1823, once the War of 1812 was done, it was kind of just sitting here. They actually created an opera house here. They put a roof on it. They created an opera house and all this stuff. It was called, opera house came along a little later, but it was called Castle Garden. It was like a fancy restaurant, a place to hang out. And that was done on purpose to make it a fancy place. It's actually where they welcomed General Marquis de Lafayette up from France. There's also too in 1850, where the famous Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale, they called her, is also the name of my improv group, Swedish Nightingales. That's not true. But anyways, that was where she performed. She was brought over here by P.T. Barnum from Europe. A lot of cool. All right. So it was very important all the way up until 1855, when it was turned into an immigrant processing center. And over here in the distance, you see all these little all the little vegetation there. That's actually the Battery Urban Farm. So in 2011, a few high schoolers from the Millennium High School nearby actually requested that they be allowed to plant some trees and things like that and veggies. And it's since grown, and thousands of pounds of vegetables are grown here every year. Isn't that cool, Lucy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate vegetables, so I don't really eat too much from here. No need to eat vegetables, right? Just straight up meat, baby. Chicken and turkey. Without chicken and turkey, I would fall into the ocean. All right. You like vegetables though, don't you? What's your favorite vegetable? Gross. All right, let's keep moving. Oh, over here too is a statue of a man named John Ericsson. This is kind of cool. He was a Swedish guy, came here, was a genius, but he was responsible for creating the USS Monitor, which was the first ironclad warship here. It fought for the Union in the Civil War, and it was a really important thing. It was actually built over in Greenpoint, believe it or not, which I covered in my Greenpoint video. Sick plug, baby.
What does they say in Polish? Siklak.
Nice. She said Polish because Greenpoint was a Polish neighborhood. But you got to watch the video to know that. Anyways, cool story about that. He actually made a ship before the Monitor called the USS Princeton. And in 1843, it had an explosion on it, an accidental explosion, and they were like, it was a demonstration for like the President of the United States and all this stuff. They were actually riding on it. And this explosion killed the Secretary of the Navy and the Secretary of State who were riding on board, as well as a senator. So this is kind of interesting. The senator's daughter was named Julia Gardner. And the President of the United States at the time, his name was John Tyler. He was interested in Julia Gardner. He had asked her out a couple of times. She'd rejected him. She was only 21 years old. And eventually, after her dad died on board, he kept like consoling her and asking her out, and she eventually relented and married him. At 23 years old, he was like in his 50s. And they got married at the Church of the Ascension in Greenwich Village. The only time a sitting US president has ever been married in office was at the Church of the Ascension in Greenwich Village, and it was John Tyler to Julia Gardner. That's a cool fact, right, Lucy?
Yeah, really cool.
And interestingly enough, Julia Gardner was the one who came up with the idea of playing Hail to the Chief every time the president shows up somewhere. That was her idea. So we're walking here, and right in front of me is Broadway. This is where Broadway begins, huh? The longest street in New York. I've talked about that in the past. Broadway actually goes all the way through Manhattan, continues north, crosses the Harlem River into the Bronx, leaves Bronx, continues on for like almost like another 100 miles, and actually goes all the way to pretty much Albany, to like the road that takes you into Albany. So that's kind of interesting. That's the beginning there, and that's Bowling Green. That's another video. I think I covered that in my Lower Manhattan video. Sick plug. But you can see here behind me, this big old building. This building here is actually, well, today it's the Smithsonian, a branch of the Smithsonian. It's the Museum of the American Indian. But this is where Fort Amsterdam used to be located, and also Fort George. So Fort Amsterdam was kind of the main, stronghold of New Amsterdam. And then when the British took it over, they renamed it Fort George. Fort George was torn down in 1788, after the Americans had already took it over. And today it's this beautiful building. It was built as a customs house. Interesting fact, customs was one of the main ways that the United States government made its revenue before the income tax was put in place. So this is pretty cool here. This is the Netherland Monument, and this commemorates the Dutch history of New York. It has a lot of the interesting facts about this area here. So in 1626, the Director General named Peter Minuit bought Manhattan from the Lenape Indians for what they say was around 60 guilders worth. There was an arbitrary number pinned on that of $24 worth of wampum and things. That's not a true number. In fact, in other later books, in fact, Mike Wallace and Edwin Burroughs, nice little book. Yeah, I read books, no big deal. They actually said it's closer to like a few $100. But it was done around this area, they say. So they put this here to kind of, commemorate that. You see this here? There's Peter Minuit scamming the Indians, huh? What's interesting though is the Indians the Native Americans thought they were kind of getting away with one, because they didn't really believe in the idea of owning property that way. So it's like someone came up to you and was like, hey, I'll give you $100 for that air you're breathing from under your face. You'd be like, okay, just give me $100. You can't take the air from my face. So they were like, yeah, okay, sure, we'll give you the land, whatever that means. And they took the stuff, and little did they know they were gonna come back with guns and stuff and be like, get the hell off our land. That's a whole nother story. So Peter Minuit, Netherland Monument here. It's a flagpole, kind of cool. And now we're walking back in to Battery Park here. I'm gonna take you guys to a pretty cool little spot, end this tour, really, really good view. Here you have the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, actually. You may recognize it from the movie Men in Black. Huh? Men in Black? You ever seen that, Lucy?
Yeah, the Balchinians.
The Balchinians, that's right. I like how that's the one thing you remember about the entire movie. Yeah, Men in Black, the Balchinian movie, right? starring the ultimate Balchinian, Will Smith. Here, watch out, you don't get run over.
Guys came up, they were like, what's going on in here? The guy's like, what's going on?
So this is the Brooklyn Battery, entrance to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. And you see the World Trade Center there. We'll get a better view of it here in a second. But this is all Battery Park here to my left. So I think it's important to note that the Dutch, what I was talking about, the Dutch influence before. So the Dutch were only here and only owned the island for, what, since 1625 to 1664. Not a long time, like 40 years. But they laid the foundation for what ended up being New York. And one of the reasons why New York is so different from the rest of the Northeast. So the Dutch were, one, they were very liberal compared to the British. They were a little more, the British was a monarchy. It was very top down. The idea of democratic rule and things like that was kind of foreign to the British. So they kind of had a little more open of a society. They allowed slaves to eventually get their freedom, own property. They still had slavery, but they weren't as crazy about it as the British were. Also, too, they were mercantile, man. They were in the heyday of their, like, you know, coming up and getting rich and trade and all that stuff. So the people who came here weren't just Dutch. One, they came here to work pretty much underneath the Dutch East India Company, then the Dutch West India Company, and try to get rich. So they came here with a purpose. A lot of the people going to other parts of New England at the time, in the Northeast, were coming here because they were escaping persecution or escaping political strife or something. So they didn't have a choice. The people who came here came to strike it rich, and they brought that energy with it. And it's kind of interesting that that's kind of why New York is the way it is today. Speaking of which, this is a monument to the Walloons, who came from an area of Hainaut, Belgium. I'm really butchering that, sorry. But they came from this area of Belgium. They were actually booted from that area, and then they escaped to Holland, where they were able to then come to here, to New Amsterdam in 1624. They actually initially tried to go under the English in Virginia, but they were rejected. It was underneath the Dutch, the more free-thinking Dutch, that they were finally allowed to come here, and they made some money and got to hang out. They got to hang out. That's all life is really about, finding your place where you're able to hang out. So we're walking around the perimeter here. It's gonna start getting bright here in a second. How's it looking, Lucy?
Great, Tom.
Yeah? Are you learning some stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. That's pretty cool. So you come to Battery Park often?
All the time.
Cool. So over here to my right, if you want to get over on this side and show you this whole area here is Battery Park City. I'll do another video one of these days on Battery Park City. But Battery Park City was actually created partially with the excavation, all the land that was excavated when the World Trade Center was finished in the 1970s. They had to dig a lot to create the foundation for it, and they took a lot of that dirt and they put it here and created Battery Park City. Now it's a place where some celebs live, very fancy. People like Leonardo DiCaprio have had a place there, Tyra Banks, Sacha Baron Cohen. All right, let's cross. Don't want to get run over by a bike. Bikers are nuts in New York City. You know, that's the problem. You cross the street, you look both ways. You have to look both ways, even on one-way streets, because bikers like to go the wrong way on one-way streets. A car can't get away with that. Sorry, this is like me just complaining now. This is a cool one here. So this is a cool story. This is Giovanni da Verazzano. He was an Italian guy who actually worked for the French, looking once again for a route to the Pacific, like everyone was in the 1500s, 1600s. So this guy actually came here and found New York Harbor in 1524. He was the first guy to come here. He came here before Henry Hudson, who the river's named after, Hudson Bay, a lot of stuff named after him. Verrazzano has the bridge to Staten Island from Brooklyn named after him. But he came here, discovered it, didn't really explore the same way that Hudson did. But interesting story. He left on another trip the following, I think it was 1526 or 27, he left on another trip trying to find that same route. He ends up having an insurrection on his trip. People mutinied on. I don't know. It happens when you're a captain. Then the next trip, on the third trip, he actually went to the Caribbean. It was going around Florida, that area, and he gets out of his little boat, goes into an island, and tries to interact with the locals. And he's murdered and eaten by cannibals. Go figure. It's a pretty bad experience. you know, when you meet someone new, it's really got to scar his crew who watched that happen. But yeah, that's him, Giovanni da Verazzano, pretty cool. And then beneath him is a statue. That's Audrey Munson, the famous Audrey Munson, the most famous model in New York history. She's on the top of tons of buildings and fountains. The most famous female model in the early 1900s. Every sculptor, every artist wanted to use her. And she was actually the first woman to be featured nude in a film, actually, in the early 1900s as well. That's kind of a creepy fact to mention, but you know, it's a fact nonetheless, so chill out. Cool statue though, no? In fact, the sculptor who made this was responsible for the Dante sculpture that's in front of Lincoln Center, which I covered in my Upper West Side video. We're connecting it all, baby. Come on, let's go. We're almost done. We're snaking around here. And here you got another shot in front of me of Castle Clinton, which once again was kind of like a showpiece in the 1840s. They put the roof, it became an opera house. In fact, Samuel Morse demonstrated his telegraph here. Samuel Colt demonstrated his revolver here as well. So some cool stuff. So like I said, in 1890, they stopped doing the immigrant processing here. In fact, one of the problems, one of the reasons the federal government took it over was because the poor immigrants were getting taken advantage of. People would come here, they'd get out and be like, oh my God, America, we are here. And then a million people would come up to me like, hey, we'll come take us to a hotel, give us all your stuff, give us $100 and we'll get you there. And they're like, okay, give it to them. And then it's like, hey, where'd that nice guy go? All their stuff's gone. They got scammed. People still scam you here in New York if you're from somewhere else. Just go to Times Square. See how many, you know, CDs you get sold or whatever. This is a Korean War memorial, Korean War. Three-year conflict from 1950, 1953. Often very forgotten. They call it the Forgotten War, actually. Not many people talk about the Korean War. But this was to the people who died during the Korean War. Kind of dark. All right, there's a pretty cool memorial over here. So yeah, this is a Battery Park. It's very popular for tourists because right over there is where you get on to go to the Statue of Liberty. If you come to New York, yeah, you got to see the Statue of Liberty, but I would recommend just getting on the Staten Island Ferry, which actually picks up on the other side of Battery Park, rather than getting on this Liberty cruise thing, because it drops you off at Liberty Island. They now have a museum there. In all fairness, I haven't been to the museum yet, but you know, you see the Statue of Liberty is the coolest part, right? I will recommend going to Ellis Island. That's pretty sick. So now we're walking over here to the water, and you're going to see the Merchant Mariners Memorial here to my right. This is dedicated to the merchant mariners that died during World War II. So merchant mariners were pretty much just people who worked on like merchant ships and things who would sail out in the Atlantic Ocean and they get sunk by U-boats. It was a total mess. So, you know, a lot of these merchant ships, 700 or something like that, were sunk. You know, thousands of people died, and they were just people trying to do their jobs. This is actually based on a photograph of some dudes that were actually kind of like stranded, trying to get saved. Kind of brutal, and when it sinks, you can see the hand. When the tide goes up and down, you can see the hand and goes up and down. All right, let's go. Merchant Mariners Memorial. People don't even know this is here. And then over here, you got Pier A. So Pier A right here actually dates back to 1886. It was built to be the headquarters of the docks and all that area. Pretty old little pier. The clock there was put in place in 1919 to actually honor more servicemen, this time killed during World War I. And it actually used to be a firehouse. It used to be a firehouse until the early 90s, actually. And now you got a great view of the World Trade Center. Look at that, right in front of me. It's pretty cool. It's gonna get dark. World Trade Center was put there, actually, the new World Trade Center was just finished a few years ago, but it replaced the old World Trade Center, the Twin Towers. I'll do a video on these one day here, pretty soon, but pretty good view. This is actually probably the best place to get a view of the World Trade Center in New York. It's actually 1,776 feet tall to the end of the spire. The year of American independence. Ah. So now we're heading over to Robert Wagner Park. Robert Wagner was one of the mayors of New York, actually from the 50s to the mid-60s. But this is his park. And a really cool view that you're going to see here. This is a place I like to take people. Oh, lot of bikers come through here. I always get kind of nervous doing these things because all these people are just kind of walking around and we're just doing this thing all in one shot. In case you're wondering how we do this, I just walk around and then I go back and do the B-roll. But this is all straight out of here, straight off the cuff, baby. All right, this is the view right here. Come on. Once we get out of this shade, we'll get the... We can go this way. So now we're here in Robert Wagner Park. We're walking to this view that I wanted to show you. And then we'll finish pretty soon. But this is a really popular little park where the people who live in Battery Park City. You can come here maybe and check out Leo, OMG, that heartthrob. You got all the view here in a second. We'll show you that. But yeah, Battery Park, pretty cool place. Like I said, this is as early as the 1600s, late 1600s. People would just stroll through here when there was just cannons facing out. A lot of this landfill that was actually filled in to connect with that fort, with the Castle Clinton, that was actually built on like a little island, almost a couple hundred feet offshore, and it was eventually filled in to connect with it. So it's changed over time, and now we're actually gonna get down to the end of this. And so behind me you also have here the Museum of Jewish Heritage, which is this 6-sided hexagon created for the 6 points of the Jewish star, the 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust, that whole thing. It's kind of a bummer, but hey, it happened, so here we go. All right, great view here. You want to get on this side over here, Lucy, so the sun's behind you? You can see over here to the right, you got Jersey City, New Jersey, across the water. And then here you got Governor's Island. You have over in the distance the Verrazzano Bridge. Verrazzano Bridge, obviously, interesting, named after Giovanni da Verazzano. They actually spelled it wrong when they named it and just recently corrected it with a state law. But it's what connects Staten Island to Brooklyn. And it's actually the longest suspension bridge in North America. Kind of cool. It's where the New York Marathon starts. You also have there the Statue of Liberty, good old Lady Liberty. Liberty enlightening the world, the official name of that statue, not the Statue of Liberty. I talked about that in my Statue of Liberty video, which you should check out because it's got a great story. Sick plug. And then you have Ellis Island. Now, I was telling you that the Castle Clinton used to be the processing center of immigration from 1855 to 1890, and it processed like over 8 million immigrants, which is a lot. Well, to give you an idea, Ellis Island was really only open from 1892, well, 1900, that specific building, 1900 to 1924. And in that time, it actually processed 12 million. They say 40% of Americans can trace at least one ancestor through Ellis Island, which is pretty crazy. I definitely recommend you check that out. Over there, you also have in Jersey the station that would send the immigrants to other parts of the country, those who did not stay in New York. But this is all New York Harbor. One of the things that made it so attractive to Henry Hudson, who this river is named after, actually it's a tidal estuary, not a river, but I digress. But it actually made it attractive because it's deep and it's protected by these two land masses, Long Island and Staten Island. It's pretty great, lots of wildlife, all kinds of stuff here, which is one of the reasons why people wanted to settle. There is a ton of history here. I just wanted to do this little park because it's probably a park you're going to see if you come to visit New York because there's a lot of tourists here, so you'll probably be here. But you should know a little bit about it. That's what I have to say. Aside from that, I don't really know what to tell you. Lucy, did I forget anything?
No.
Do you have any questions after today?
No.
Not one question, huh?
Where's the best hot dog?
The best hot dog? After the tour of Battery Park, Lucy wants to know where the best hot dog is. All right, well, I don't know. I guess I stopped by the Gray's Papaya. It's a good hot dog over in Upper West Side. I like that place. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, you didn't have to make up a question just to make me happy. I'm happy with you as my camera woman anyway.
Thank you.
Wink. All right, well, that's pretty much it. I'm pretty much rambling at this point. We're here in Robert Wagner Park, right next to the side of Battery Park. It's all kind of the southern tip of Manhattan. Pretty cool area. Before we finish completely forever and ever, please subscribe. subscribe. You're going to watch more of these. Believe it or not, you're going to watch more of these. You don't know it yet maybe, but you will. You're going to want to know more about New York and more about other places I visit. Also too, like the video, just give it a thumbs up. Super easy, just click it. And also too, check out the Patreon if you like the videos that I make. That's a super huge help, and that's how I fund these things. Want to keep growing these things. We'll see where this all goes, huh, baby? Who knows in a year where this will all be. Maybe I'll be in jail for trespassing or something. Or maybe I'll be making more cool videos, who knows? But you'll be a part of it either way. I won't turn you in, don't worry. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know what else to tell you. Lucy, miss anything?
We had a flood yesterday.
Yeah, I did talk about that earlier. Huge flood. In fact, the show that I run here every Wednesday in the East Village, the whole basement started flooding in the middle of the show. We had to cut it short. Kind of crazy. When you're in New York, check out that show at What Else Comedy on Instagram. All right, I don't want to digress too much. But that's pretty much it, guys. If you're in New York, hit me up. We can show you around. That's pretty much it. See y'all later.